Hi everyone, it's Sandy, and in today's video I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. So I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in January. I had a pretty small reading month in January. I only ended up reading 3 books, but that's totally okay because I had a very busy past few weeks since the semester has started. The first book that I finished in January is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. If you're not familiar with the Shades of Magic trilogy, the first book is called A Darker Shade of Magic, and it basically follows 2 characters, Cal and Lila. The world that they live in revolves around parallel Londons. There's Red London, White London, Grey London, and there used to be a Black London. Each Londons have their own distinct features. So Cal and Lila end up working together on this mission, and I can't really remember the details of this mission, but it involves taking this object back to Black London, which no longer exists. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about the first book. I read it in 2017, and it's one of my favorites that I read that year. And unfortunately, the second book was just pretty disappointing. I just didn't think this book was as exciting, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I did with the first book. Nothing really happens for a large chunk of this book, which made it feel like it was slow and it was dragging. A large portion of this book was just building up to this tournament that was happening towards the end of the book, and that tournament didn't start until like 60 or 70% into the book, which I think is a pretty long wait time because the first half of the book was just a lot of build up and nothing was happening. And speaking of this tournament, this magic tournament, I felt like didn't have any relevance to the plot and aftermath of what happened in the first book. The tournament was just kind of random and it was just there. The tournament did end in the second book, but I don't see how that is going to help develop the third book. I did really enjoy reading about the tournament scene. I thought it was really fun and cool to read, but in the grand scheme of things, the tournament is pretty pointless and doesn't really add much to the actual storyline. I ended up rating this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I definitely will continue on with the last book. I heard that the last book happens to be a lot of people's favorites, so I'm definitely excited to go into that. The next book that I finished is Meetcute, edited by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is an anthology that contains short stories written by 14 different authors, and the theme of these short stories are meet cutes, which basically means the first time that characters are meeting, and it's like the beginning of a love story. Overall, I really enjoyed this anthology. I love the whole concept of meet cute. A lot of the short stories were super cute and fun, and I also really loved how there are so many diverse stories in this book. There is a handful of female-female romance stories, which I really love to read because I haven't read many of those. There are a bunch of characters from different racial backgrounds, and there's even a transgender main character. The stories were just really heartwarming to read, and a couple of my favorites were Nina LaCour's short story and Emery Lord's short story. I also think this is a really great book to pick up if you're in a reading slump because of the whole short story element, and it's all like meet cute moments, which is really fun and you can easily get into the stories. I do have individual ratings for each of the short stories on my Goodreads review. I didn't really go in depth with my review, I just have the individual rating. I didn't average all the ratings, but overall as a book I probably would say that this is like a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I finished in January is Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. This was one of my most anticipated reads for 2017, and I finally was able to get to it in January. This is an East Asian fantasy reimagining of the Evil Queen legend, and immediately upon hearing that I was hooked and I knew that I needed to read it. Since this is like a retelling of the Evil Queen, it basically sets up the story to how the Evil Queen came to be who she is, and because of that the main character is an anti-hero, and that was just so refreshing to read about. The main character Shifeng is not selfless, she's not caring, and she's not driven by a romantic interest. She can be very selfish at times and she does what she wants. She doesn't really care what the consequences are or who gets thrown under the bus in order for her to take a step closer to her goal. I also really liked how at the beginning of the book she doesn't start off as being evil. You see the evil inside her slowly develop over the course of the book. So throughout this book you do see her struggling with doing good or doing bad and pursuing what she wants no matter what the consequences are. And the main thing that I really loved about our main character is that she has agency. She goes after what she wants and she doesn't let anything stop her from that. Even if there are obstacles, she doesn't let that get in the way. So overall, I rated this book a 4 out of 5 stars. And I'm pretty sure that the next book in the series is the retelling of Snow White, which is really cool because the ending of this book sets up for that, and I'm really excited to see where the story goes from there. Those are all the books that I read in January. If you've read any of the books that I mentioned, please let me know your thoughts on them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye!